What up, Enzo? What up, OTG? Yeah, what are we looking at today? Looking at Marvel Champions, a game that I've played exactly once before. Uber popular Fantasy Flight games. Yeah, plan on playing this maybe Monday or soon with a review on YouTube. Creator of Beta Earth card game. Check him out on YouTube. But anyway, let's unbox this guy. Yeah, battle your favorite heroes in this co-op card game for 1 to 4 players. Co-op, boo earns. Game designed by Michael Boggs, Nate French, and Caleb Grace. Don't necessarily know any of those names, but I'm sure they made some greats. They made Marvel Champions. All right, Marvel Champions, rise to the challenge. Rhino rampages through the streets of New York. Claw masterminds a team of fearsome criminals, and Ultron threatens nuclear annihilation. The world needs champions to stop these villains. Are you up to the task? Marvel Champions, the card game, is a co-op living card game that invites you to embody the world's most iconic heroes. This core set allows for up to 4 players to combine their efforts to thwart twisted schemes of 3 different villains. Discover extraordinary powers, battle the forces of evil, and experience the Marvel Universe like never before. As a living card game, new heroes are released regularly, along with new villains, challenges, and adventures to test these champions. Includes 5 heroes: Spidey, Captain Marvel, She-Hulk, Iron Man, and Black Panther. Scan now to see the cards inside. 1 learn to play, 1 rules reference, 199 player cards, 137 encounter cards, 7 reference cards, 30 status cards, 62 damage tokens, 33 threat tokens, 5 acceleration tokens, 1 first player token, 4 player hit point dials, 1 villain hit point dial, and 16 all-purpose counters. 1 to 4 players, 45 to 90 minutes. Yeah, like trying to think of the game that this was most likely inspired by. Can't really think of it at the moment, but similar type deal. I played that exactly once as well. Yep, and I sold my copy that I had. Book, rules reference, dials to make, and big insert for plenty of expansions. Tough cards. What you put in the dials to make the dials work. Very much like Keyforge tokens. Very, very much like Keyforge tokens. I put this little sheet that I printed out myself, kind of similar to this. Oh, I said I kept it out. But yeah. Sits and the dials. These are the dials. This. Where do we start? Rules reference to learn to play. We'll go start with learn to play. Alright, Marvel Champions, the card game overview. Marvel Champions, the card game is a co-op card game for 1 to 4 players. Each player takes the role of a Marvel hero, playing the game as that character and their alter ego. In the game, players work together to defeat a villain controlled by the game who is trying to complete an evil scheme using this book. This learn to play book is written as an intro to the Marvel Champions, the card game. For new players, it should be used as a guide while learning the game. We recommend that new players learn the basics of the game by reading through this book and playing a game using the intro scenario and pre-con decks during setup. More advanced topics and additional rules regarding terminology, interpretation of card text, timing conflicts, and card anatomies are included in the rules reference. We recommend that new players become familiar with the game using the Learn to Play book and only look up the details in the rules references they're needed during play. A living card game, we know what that is. Components, kind of already read that. Construct the dials. Okay, setup. To set up the first game, perform the following steps in order. For the first game, we recommend playing with only one or two characters, one or two players, and using the heroes Spider-Man and Captain Marvel, and that's against Rhino. And instructions for setting up the specific scenario are provided with each step. The Spidey, Captain Marvel, and Rhino decks have been pre-sorted in the core set for convenience, and only the cards in these three decks are used in the tutorial game. Select heroes. Each player selects one identity card and places its alter ego side face up in front of them. And I'll remove some cards. Yeah, set hit points. Looks like 10. Select first player. As a group, the player selects the first player and place the first player token in front of that player. Set aside obligations for each hero being played. Set aside their obligation card. These cards are used later in setup. Remove the eviction notice card from Spider-Man and set it aside. Remove the family emergency card from the Captain Marvel deck and set it aside. And set aside the Nemesis sets for each hero being played. Then set aside their Nemesis and the encounter cards for that Nemesis. The Nemesis cards don't start the game in play, but may be brought into play by other card abilities during the game. Shuffle player decks. Okay. Collect tokens and status cards. Create a pool of damage tokens, threat tokens, and all-purpose counters. And set up for single player after completing step 6. Turn the page to set up the villain area. Yeah, I mean, this might be a cool game to solo too. I got a million games to solo, but I just need to start doing it more. But I mean, it might not be realistic as I'm trying to make a bunch of games too. But we'll see. We'll see what we can do. But select the villain, set the villain's HP, resolve scheme setup, read the intro text on side 1A for the break-in, and turn it over to advanced to stage 1B. Create and shuffle encounter deck, draw cards. Hand size 6, hand size. Peter Parker draws 6, Carol Danvers draws 6. Resolve mulligans. Okay, each player may discard any number of cards from their hand, then draw up to the starting hand size. Don't shuffle these discarded cards back into their decks at this time. A mulligan is an opportunity for players to improve their starting hand. If a player likes the cards in their hand, they should keep those cards. If there are any cards a player doesn't like in their hand, mulligan those specific cards. Resolve character setup abilities. Resolve any setup instructions listed on the identity card. Set up for single player and the villain at the start of the game. Mid-game play area, main scheme, side schemes, villain, encounter deck, encounter discards, villain hit point dial. Key concepts, the golden rule: if a text contradicts the card, whatever the rules, go with the card. Player per player, that's their symbol. Winning and losing. The villain is represented by the multiple villain cards, and each card has a stage number in the upper right corner. The players defeat a villain stage by reducing its hit points to 0, which advances the game to the next villain stage. If the players defeat the final villain stage, they win the game. The villain wins the game if they complete their scheme, or if all players are eliminated. The scheme is completed if the villain accumulates the amount of threat specified by the final card on their scheme deck. A player is eliminated if their hit points are reduced to 0. Ready and exhausted in player order. Sometimes used to dictate which player resolves the game step. If players are instructed to do so in player order, the first player does so first. Game overview. It's played over a series of rounds. During the player phase, the players take turns in player order. During their turn, the player can play cards from their hand, attack enemies, thwart villain schemes, and use the ally support and upgrade cards they have in play. After all players have taken a turn, the player phase ends and play proceeds to the villain phase. At the start of the villain phase, the threat is placed on the main scheme. Then the villain activates once per player and either attacks the player or further advances their scheme. Next, the game reveals cards from the encounter deck, which adds minions, treachery, side schemes, and attachments that develop the villain's forces and beleaguer the heroes. After the villain phase is complete, the first player token passes to the next clockwise player, and the next round begins. The game advances this way until either the player wins as a team or the villains wins. Round sequence, player phase, the villain phase. The rules for each phase are detailed in the following sections. Player phase, player turn, change form from hero to alter ego or from alter ego to hero. This option may only be performed once each turn, so upkeep can change form, or you must. I'm sure it's may. Play an ally upgrade or support card from their hand. Use their alter ego's basic recovery if in alter ego form, or their hero's basic attack or basic thwart power if in hero form. Use an ally card to control they control to attack an enemy or thwart a scheme. Trigger an action card or ability on a card in play they control. Yeah, trigger. Ask another player to trigger an action ability on a card they control or event card they have in hand. The other player then decides whether or not to trigger the ability. Another player may offer to use an action during the active player's turn as well. Changing form to change form from hero to alter ego. Flip the card. This player may change form once each round, only during their own turn. Okay. Playing a card. To play a card from their hand, the player performs the following steps. Place the card they want to play on the table. Pay the card's cost. If the card is an ally, upgrade, or support, it enters play ready into the player's play area. And if the card is an event, resolve its effects and place it into the discard pile. An ally limit. Each player may have up to 3 allies in play. At any given time, a player who controls 3 allies may play a different ally by discarding one of the previous ones using a basic power. Basic powers can be found on the player's identity card. The hero's side has the character's basic attack power, basic thwart, and basic defense power. The alter ego side has the character's basic recovery power. To use the basic power, the character must be in the form that has the power. To use the basic power, a player performs the following: declare the power they want to use, pay the power's cost, resolve the effect on the power, resource cost, mental, physical, energy, wild. A wild resource may be used as any other resource type, mental, physical, or energy. Generally, when playing cards from hand, any type or combination of types of resources may be used to pay for the card's cost. However, many abilities and encounter cards require a specific combination of types of resources to be paid. Swinging Web Kick has a resource cost of 3, but Tom discards Spider Tracer, 1 resource, and Ingenious, 2 resources from his hand to pay the cost of 3. Yeah, and 3, that goes. Generic. Alright, basic recovery. The player exhausts their alter ego and heals the number of hit points equal to their recovery value. Healing increases a player's HP dial by the indicated amount. A player can't heal above their maximum points. So, Carol Danvers, she has a 4 recover. Basic thwart. The player exhausts their hero and removes an amount of threat described later equal to the thwart value. Yeah, let me go ahead and highlight that. Basic thwart. The player exhausts their hero. Removes an amount of threat. Cool. Basic attack. The player exhausts their hero and deals an amount of damage. See dealing damage sidebar and equal to their attack value. And yeah, I've had this game at least over a year, probably 2 years. I'm just cracking it. Basic attack. Any enemy, villain, or minion in play is able to, unless a card ability such as guard keyword prevents it. The basic defense. The power may only be used when any hero is being attacked by an enemy. When this occurs, a player may exhaust their hero to prevent an amount of damage equal to their. This power may only be used when a hero is being attacked by an enemy. Only when any hero being attacked by an enemy. So you can block for other heroes. Using an ally during this turn, a player may use any number of allies they control to attack an enemy or thwart a scheme. Or thwart. Exhaust the ally. Declare whether they're using the ally to attack or thwart. Declare which enemy they're attacking or thwarting. Resolve the attack. Deal consequential damage. If the ally that attacks has any damage icons under their attack, deal the specified amount of damage to the ally. Triggering an action ability. Action abilities are indicated by the action in bold. A player can trigger abilities from cards they control and play. Declare which action they want to trigger. Pay the thing's cost, which precedes its effect with the arrow icon. This is done by generating resources. A given action ability may be triggered any number of times per turn, so long as its cost can be paid. Heroes and alter ego abilities. Hero alter ego action abilities on encounter cards. Some encounter cards have action abilities that players may use while the card is in play. Okay. And other triggered abilities, interrupts may be used anytime. Response after a certain thing, I'm sure. Okay, in the player's turn, in the player's phase, villain's phase, place threat on the main scheme. The villain activates once per player, along with any eligible minions. Villain activates once per player, along with eligible minions. Deal 1 encounter card to each player. Reveal encounter cards. Pass the first player token and end the round. The scheme deck that represents the villain's main primary objective. If a villain completes the first stage of the scheme deck, the villain wins the game. For some villains, the main scheme deck is just one stage. If a villain completes the final stage of the scheme deck, it's kind of stupid. I'm highlighting red on red, of course. Some main schemes start with threat on them. When a card or game rule instructs an enemy or villain to scheme, a number of threat equal to the scheme value of that enemy is placed on the main scheme. Starting threat 7, target threat 7, starting threat 0. The final stage of a scheme deck advances, the players immediately lose the game. Step 1, place threat. Okay, this guy does +1. Rhino does +1. The acceleration field. Step 2, villains and minion activations. The villain will activate once against each player in player order, and after it activates against a player, each minion engaged with that player also activates. Each minion engaged with that player also activates. These activations resolve differently based on the player's character form. If the player is in alter ego form, the villain or minion schemes. If the player is in a hero form, the minion attacks. Hero form attacks. Alter ego schemes. After the villain completes its activation for a player, it goes for the next player. Villain completes activation for a player, activates for the next player. in player order, continuing until it's activated for all players. Strategy tip: your character's form, hero, or alter ego greatly influences the villain's behavior each round. Alter ego form, enemy schemes. If the player is in alter ego form, the villain schemes, yeah. Okay, they add scheme basically. Hero form, they attack. We know about attacking, I'm sure. Deal encounter cards. Deal one card from the encounter deck face down to each player in player order. One card face down, each player in play order. All of the encounter cards dealt in the previous step are revealed and resolved one at a time. In player order, when an encounter card is revealed, it's resolved based on its card type as follows: minion, treachery. Minion, when a minion is revealed, it enters play engaged with the player who revealed the card. Place the minion near their player to show it's engaged. Treachery, when a treachery is revealed, resolve its effect and then place it in the discard pile. Attachment, when an attachment is revealed, it enters play attached to the villain. Side scheme, when a side scheme is revealed, enters play ready next to the main scheme. Side schemes enter play with an amount of threat already on them. Threat may be removed from a side scheme when heroes or allies use basic thwart power or via card abilities. If a side scheme has 0 threat on it, discard it. Side scheme icons: crisis, acceleration, hazard, and when revealed abilities, and when defeated abilities, death rattle. Alter ego form, hero form, nemesis side schemes. If card instructs a player to put a nemesis side scheme into play, the nemesis side scheme associated with the player that drew the card is placed in the play area, and the nemesis minion is put into play engaged with that. Nemesis minion is put into play engaged with that player. The other encounter cards associated with that nemesis are played in the encounter discard pile. The other encounter cards associated with that nemesis are placed in the discard pile. Spider-Man, Vulture, Highway Robbery, the Vulture's plans. Each hero's nemesis side scheme and associated cards are as follows. Obligations. During setup, each player shuffles their character's obligation card into the encounter deck. If an obligation is revealed from the encounter deck, immediately give it to the player controlling the character that's written on the obligation. That player follows the instructions on the obligation to resolve it. Step 5, pass the first player token and end the round. What's next? The cards, starter decks, deck customization, player customization rules. Player's deck consists of a minimum 40 cards, max 50 cards. The identity card is not counted as part of the deck. Player's deck must include each of the hero cards associated with the chosen identity card. The exact quantity of each card included in that hero set must be included in the deck. A player must choose exactly one aspect. The remainder of the deck is then customized with cards that belong to that aspect and or basic cards. No more than 3 copies. By title, no more than 1 copy by title of each unique card. Beyond the core set, core scenarios: Rhino 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, Rhino 1, Rhino 2, Claw 1, Claw 2, Ultron 1, 2, and scenario customization rules. Expert mode. Expert mode consists of expert mode is for advanced players who are seeking a greater challenge. To play in this mode, use the expert mode villain stages listed for the chosen scenario and add the expert encounter set to the scenario. Expert encounter set: exhaustion, master plan, under fire. Okay. And that's that. And then rules reference. And then the next video will be flipping through the cards. Glossary, All the real details. And this hitting card, abilities, modifiers, move, remaining HP, play restrictions and permissions, star icon. Star icon is used next to the encounter card, attack, and scheme values, and in the boost area to indicate that there is an associated ability in the text box that resolves each time the card uses its attack, scheme, or boost. Okay. Undefended, unique, subtitle, appendix 2 setup. Nicely laid out. Card anatomy. Good stuff. And it has the player reference cards. I'm of the belief that many games should include like four levels of rules. You got the learn play, just get in there quick, the real nitty gritty rules, player reference cards, and then there should be like an intermediary that's one sheet learn to play, kind of like the fact that you can reference real fast on one sheet for like if you haven't played in a year, you can just pick it right back up and know the nitty gritty of the facts that you might run into and just how to get really back into it. But anyway, yeah, flip through the cards. Come back, check me out later. I will be flipping through these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stacks of cards. Kind of 6. Oil Games. Like, comment, subscribe, and Leonard Nimoy.